Welcome back to our fifth episode on the people in the book of Ruth. This is episode number 5 on Boaz, Ruth's husband, and Obed, their son. Boaz enters Ruth's story at the beginning of chapter 2. But perhaps we should say that Ruth enters the story of Boaz. After all, Boaz remained in the land of Judah throughout the 12 years of drought. He had seen much suffering and experienced deprivation from food himself, as every other person in Judea did during that time. Then finally the rains came, and Boaz was able to plant some barley. The mere fact that Boaz had barley seed available to plant shows how resourceful he was. Many people had had to eat their bags of seed in order to survive during the 12-year drought. Others, without adequate protection for their seed, had seen it spoiled by rodents. But Boaz had bags of seed, and so the narrator is justified in introducing him with the words Ish Gibbor Hayil. An Ish is not just an ordinary guy, a gever. He's not a common man, an Adam. He is an Ish, a personage of some repute, a person of standing, a nobleman, a wealthy man, a self-defined man, an autonomous man, a man with independence of means. A Gibbor is a strong man. In wartime, he is a warrior. In peacetime, he is an assertive economic force. And Hayil is animation of spirit, bravery in wartime, and in peacetime, someone who is resourceful. Bravo, as we would say in Italian. The same cluster of nouns may be found in 1 Samuel chapter 14, where King Saul is described as recruiting every Ish Gibbor, that is to say, every strong man, Wakol ben Hayil, and every brave boy. I like this formulation in 1 Samuel a lot, and I think it may be the idiom which is condensed slightly in the case of Boaz, because Boaz is not a boy at this time. He is Gibbor, a strong man, and he is Hayil, resourceful, but he is an Ish, a fully grown man, with a voice of authority and a voice of faith. Boaz addresses his laborers with the greeting, Adonai Rimmachem, may the Lord be with all of you. And they, in a similar spirit of faith, reply, Yavarecha Adonai, may the Lord bless you. This dialogue between Boaz and his laborers entered into the Christian liturgy, where the priest says to the people, Dominus vobiscum, the Lord be with you, and we reply, Et cum spiritu tuo, and with your spirit. Boaz speaks several times in the chapter 2, either about or to the Na'arim, the youngsters, which makes him look older. But in chapter 4, he speaks to the Zakenim, the elders, and that would seem to make him look younger. He himself is never described as Na'ar or Zakan, young or old, and therefore I conclude that he was middle-aged, possibly around the same age as Mahlon. I imagine to myself that Boaz had grown up alongside Mahlon, that they had played together as youths, that they had done practical jokes around Bethlehem when they got to be a little older, that Boaz had grieved when he saw Mahlon, his cousin, heading off towards Moab at the beginning of the drought, and that he had grieved intensely when he heard of the death of Mahlon, that he still carried his own grief for the loss of Mahlon, along with many another friend or relative from the pre-drought days. Ruth impressed Boaz because she was so physically fit, having never gone through the drought herself. But when he learned that she was the widow of Mahlon, his love for her was clinched because they had something in common. They had both loved Mahlon. They both grieved for Mahlon. When the nearer relative realized that Boaz truly loved Ruth, although the relative was interested in having the land and could afford to buy it, he stepped back like a true gentleman and allowed his cousin, who loved the woman, to have both the woman and the land. And so there came to be the baby, the little baby Obed. This is the first person named Obed in the Bible. There would be 4 others after him, possibly named for him in 1 or 2 of those cases at least. Obed in Hebrew means one who serves. The Greek for it would be diakonos. The word deacon means a servant, so deacon would be a fair translation of the name Obed. There are up to 13 men in the Old Testament who have the longer form of the name Obadiah, which means the servant of the Lord. I say up to 13 because in a couple of cases, tradition combines those Obadiahs into a smaller number of individuals. Possibly our little baby Obed's full name was Obadiah, the servant of the Lord. The women got together and gave him this name after he was born, which is a rather interesting procedure, not the normal way things are done. Normally, the father bestows the name on the child at the time of circumcision. But in this case, who is the father? Is the father Chilion, who was Ruth's first husband? Has Boaz just produced an heir for his cousin Chilion? Or is this the son of Mahlon, Ruth's second husband, who also died childless and needed an heir? Or is this Boaz's own son, which he claims in his own name? In the genealogy at the end of the book of Ruth, which is paralleled in chapter 2 of 1 Chronicles, it does not say that Chilion was the father of Obed, and it does not say that Mahlon was the father of Obed. It says that Boaz was the father of Obed. And in the genealogy in chapter 5 of Luke, the terms are flipped, and Obed is called the son of Boaz, not the son of Mahlon, and not the son of Chilion. I believe that when the nearer relative loosened his sandal and renounced his responsibility to provide an heir for Mahlon or Chilion, I believe that at that moment, Ruth became a free woman. She could pick anybody she loved at that point. She had been through so much already. Who is going to stand on ceremony here? And so I believe that Boaz married Ruth out of true love and not out of obligation to his cousins, and that nonetheless there was some confusion about who the daddy really was legally, even though there was no confusion about who was the daddy physically. And so the women had to get together and form a consensus among themselves. These people were patching their lives back together after a dozen years of dislocation and separation, of death from drought and disease. They grabbed the nearest old lady and called her mother. She grabbed the nearest baby and claimed him as grandchild. The pieces of the family puzzle might not have fit together neatly, but meeting our expectations was not the point. No, for them it was a matter of survival, of life or death. God bless them for loving each other in defiance of death, and out of that love creating a royal family, a holy family. See you next time for the final episode in our series.